Hi, gang. John White here with the Luke 10 community. And today I'm with my friend Kent Larson. Kent is in sunny Southern California. Old friend of mine, went to seminary together, and we've reconnected. And he is, among other things, Luke 10 coordinator for Orange County. Kent, I'd like you to start out just to share. This whole video, we're going to talk about the 10-2-B prayer. But why don't you start with just sharing a little bit about your ministry these days? You're a part of a church, and say a bit about that.
All right, so I'm a senior, I guess you call it a senior associate pastor of a vineyard church in Orange County, Laguna Niguel, California, and I've done that for about 16 years. Love the church, love a lot of what God's doing here in this community. And
thank you. So Kent and I reconnected with each other, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. I kind of think that the Lord of the Harvest had something to do with that, something to do with 10-2-B praying. So I think of you as a 10-2-B answer. And we started talking about a number of things, one of which is this, what we call the 10-2-B prayer, which of course is from Luke chapter 10, verse 2. Part B is the second part of that prayer, where Jesus says, therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send forth workers. And we've come to believe that that is absolutely the key to a church planting movement. So you and I started talking about these things, and that was one of the things that that you sort of connected for you. Talk about what you thought or what went through your head as we started talking about that.
Well, immediately when I started talking about that with you, some pieces started to fall together. First of all, because I had been involved in prayer for so many years and prayed a lot of prayers for the church and for revival and all. But I also got a little burned out in the process. I was just looking for something simple. And so the simplicity of the idea that Jesus was just teaching his disciples, apostles to pray a simple prayer, and that was a key to the harvest and to the multiplication and the building of the church was fascinating to me. And it felt reachable to me. It felt like, oh, I could start to do that. I could pray that every day. And so my wife and I started talking about it as a result of some of the stories that you told and just the insights that you've been working with. And it's like, let's try it. And so we just we set on our phone 10:02 a.m. and 10:02 p.m. So a little alarm that would ring, and just as a reminder, sometimes we get to pray together of that prayer, and then sometimes we just pray it on our own. But we've been doing it pretty consistently since that time and seen some wonderful results.
Great. So share some of those results. Sort of what were the next thing that happened as you began to pray that prayer?
Okay, so I'm going to share that, but I want to mention that I'm sitting at a coffee shop here in Southern California, and it's by the train station. So there's going to be a train coming by, I just realized. So you might hear a little noise in the background, but so I hope you can hear me okay.
Okay. We call this guerrilla video making.
Yeah.
So we don't do it in nice studios. We just do it out in the real world because we want to encourage everybody to make videos like this. So we're good with the train.
All right. So anyway, I would say within a week or two after first talking about 10-2-B and starting to pray that prayer, I had an interesting thing happen, and that is I'm kind of the second in command at our church. And our pastor had been on a ministry trip, and he was trying to get back to preach on Sunday morning, but he got sick on the way back. And so he called me at the last minute. We'll call this the glory train in the background. Okay, so
the glory train.
I like to go to the ends of the earth.
Yeah,
we're praying the 10-2-B prayer. Everybody get on the train. The 10-2-B prayer. Anyway, so what happened is he called at the last minute and said, hey, would you preach tomorrow? I'm too sick to do it. And so I said yes. and didn't know what I was going to preach on. But then I thought, hey, why don't I just preach on what I've been thinking about? And so the next morning I preached on Luke 10 and talked about this prayer, talked about the strategy of Jesus to send out people 2 by 2 and look for houses of peace and pray for that harvest to come in. And it was one of the most fun sermons I've ever had. It was enjoyable and seemed to have bear fruit. I also talked about the power of gratitude and some other things. But as a result of that prayer, I started to have some connection with various people. And I would say within a month afterwards, I got a call from someone in our church that I didn't really know. In fact, I didn't even know he was really coming to our church. And he wanted to have lunch, and he wanted to talk to me about my sermon. So sat down with this guy for lunch, and it turned out that this man had been, for many years, had been doing cross-cultural evangelism and signs and wonders, large gatherings, especially in Pakistan and the Middle East. Led thousands of people to the Lord, but the Lord had spoken to him and sort of rebuked him and said that he needed to plant churches the way Jesus did when he was doing this evangelism. And
Wow.
took him to Luke 10 and
Yeah.
told him that he needed to do the Luke 10 process. And so he was just fascinated by how where I came up with this whole thing, and he hadn't seen very many people actually in the United States that had that same vision. So it was immediately had a Luke 10 to be answered in a big way
Yeah.
with this guy.
So let me make an interjection there, Ken. So as we've studied that passage, it says Jesus says, "Beseech the Lord of the harvest to send forth workers into the harvest." Our sense in that context is that there are two kinds of workers. One is the person of peace or the house of peace, person who's ready to start a house church. The second kind of worker is the apostle, the sent one, who's going to be involved in starting multiple churches. And so I think what you're describing is that second type. God was connected, the Lord of the harvest was connecting you with somebody who's clearly an apostolic church planter. Very cool.
Very cool.
And one other thing. So you're preaching to the whole church. Give us a picture of how many people roughly are going to be there at the church service.
Probably about between 400 and 500 people.
Okay, good. Thank you.
In that service, yeah.
Okay, keep going.
So that was one answer, and then had another. Shortly after that, because we were in a staff meeting. Shortly after that, we started talking about the need for community and pastoral care in the church, and wanted to deepen the quality of community in the church. And as a result of that conversation that day, me and 2 other pastors were kind of assigned to start to work on developing further our small group ministry in the church. So up to that point, I've been involved with a lot of other kinds of care, but not specifically with the area of small groups. And so sort of like it fell into my lap right after starting to pray the prayer that to be able to multiply house groups and small groups in our own community. So that was without a doubt an answer. And then as a result of that, these 2 other pastors and myself, they're younger guys. One's our youth pastor, and one's even a little bit younger. Delightful guys. I think they potentially probably are apostolic type guys. So in one sense, I got linked up with 2 apostolic guys to start, and we started praying the Luke 10:2b prayer together as one of our initial approaches to building community in the church. So that was delightful, and that's
that
still
is so cool.
holding.
Yeah.
And then I was walking through the parking lot one day, and I just had this impression I was supposed to ask this guy whether he wanted to start a home group, and he said, "Oh, I've been waiting for a year for somebody to ask me that. I want so bad to start a home group." And so he was just delighted, and we met with him and actually my wife and I went to his home, and we just interacted about how to get that launched, and we told them about 10-2B and encouraged them to pray that prayer, and they linked up with another couple and they started the group already. So there's another very tangible answer to this vision.
So just comment there. I keep throwing comments in. So we think that that a person of peace or a house of peace is a place where the shalom of God has already been at work to prepare people for this message. And so you kind of come away with saying, this is church planting or small group starting, same kind of thing, is unbelievably simple because God does the heavy lifting. Therefore, he gets the credit. And that's a great story of exactly that principle.
Yeah, it's good. And then one other thing that happened was I got invited to a weekend prayer and worship thing in Orange County and reconnected with some people that I'd met over the years that had been vineyard pastors in a local vineyard church. I had not been in touch with them for probably over a year. I didn't realize that they both these couples had left staff at that church for various reasons, but the Lord had spoken specifically to both of them to start house churches. One of the ladies had a major dream, prophetic vision type of experience that told her that she was supposed to multiply house churches in North Orange County. And I had no idea that they were into all that. And so as a result of that, I connected up with them, started to pray with them. And we actually just finished doing one of the Luke 10, the Church 101 course that Luke 10 does with those two couples. So again, certainly spiritual fathers and mothers, maybe even apostolic leaders that were direct answers of connection, at least, to that prayer.
Great. So again, this idea that the Lord had gone before preveniently, if we can use that word, he had really prepared their hearts. And when they heard what you had to share, they just immediately responded. So that's an awesome story. Yeah. So Ken, just sort of summary statement, as you look back over these last 6 months or so that you've been praying this prayer, what do you feel? What goes through your mind as you kind of look back on this experience?
Well, my faith is growing. I'm excited because I think it's such a simple thing, but I think sometimes when we tune into the heart of God, hey, here's a 210B answer to prayer right here.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting at the coffee shop, and here's a kid who's house church planting, and
oh, I'm like talking to a bush. Looks like from here.
I'm doing a recording with a house church mentor.
Yeah, introduce him to us.
Oh, cool.
All right. So this is Michael Skolos.
How's it going?
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Michael and a buddy started a house church. I don't know, a couple years ago.
Probably like 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just exploding, and they're just having so much fun.
Oh my gosh, we're meeting on Fridays and Sundays, Mission Viejo, Fountain Valley, and yeah, the word's just spreading, and people are coming, getting equipped in the prophetic. And last week we did an activation on the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and we had over like 20 people who never even really had a grid for Holy Spirit or speaking in tongues, get filled with the Spirit, start praying in the Spirit. And wow. It was amazing. So cool. So
that's
we're
terrific.
Definitely seeing Holy Spirit pour out and community and family happen on like a scale that I've really never seen before. It's so natural, and it's just super organic, and it's amazing what God's doing.
You didn't know that you're only allowed to have church once a week, did you?
I didn't know that. I did. I do.
That's great. But has Kent taught you the 10-2B prayer yet?
Not the 10-2B.
Okay. Well, it's next time you have a chance with him, ask him about that.
Okay, definitely.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
Cool.
The key to multiplying churches.
10-2B, and then I'll call you. We'll talk about it.
All right, sounds good. See you later.
Bless
Nice
you.
to
Have
meet
a
you.
good
Good to
day.
meet you, Michael. What fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
So you're going to kind of reflect just for a minute on what it's been like to pray this prayer, and what's it felt like to you over these last 6 months.
So it feels like it's the easy button, you know, where Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you are heavy laden and burdened, and I will give you rest." I've been praying for, okay, how do I simplify my life? Where's the easy button in the the activation of the kingdom?
Yeah, I like that.
And this feels like one of the key easy buttons that the Lord just is so anxious to answer.
Yeah.
That it's like falling off a log. It's almost like I started to pray it, and I feel like I have so many answers to this that I could totally focus on just the answers.
Yeah.
And kind of not worry about almost any other ministry plans or strategies, because like you're saying, he's already out there doing this and wanting to do this. And so my faith is just exploding. I mean, that right there, that
Right
kid
there.
just coming up right then at the coffee
Yeah.
shop here is a perfect answer, because I told him, actually, he doesn't remember, but I did tell him about Luke 10:2b and Church
Yeah.
101. But that will actually help me activate a little bit more with him.
Yeah.
Because he came in the middle of this to give us a good dialogue about that. So that was easy, because I've been thinking about trying to meet with him and initiate time with him. Well, the Lord just set it up. I didn't have to set it up. I didn't have to make a phone call. He ends up here doing it. So I'm extremely excited about this approach.
Almost makes you think the Lord's orchestrating all this, huh?
It does.
You know, one of the things we laughingly say, Kent, is as we begin to pray this, that we begin to have so many answers that we say, I'm going to have to stop praying this every day. I'm only going to pray the 10:2b prayer every other day, just so that I can keep up with all the people God's bringing us.
That's a good point.
Let me make one last final comment on this video. One is just how thrilled I am that you and I have reconnected and become friends again, and I'm especially thrilled. You know, with Luke 10, so much of this has been with the house church movement, which is sort of separate from what I would call traditional churches, and to see some of these things beginning to happen in your church. I mean, Vineyard's not traditional in a lot of ways, but nonetheless, you meet in a building and it's a large group and all the rest. And so these simple principles are as applicable in that context as they are with an autonomous house church. So I am just delighted with that. So, yeah, God.
Great. I
All right.
am too.
Yeah.